Hi loves. Let me just play with this light. Okay, I think that's good. How is everybody doing? Oh god, there's so many things happening at the moment, I can't keep it up. But yeah, we had like major solar weather last night in the middle of the night, which I did feel actually, I felt like I had some weird demonic attack in the astrals last night. But I wanted to come in with like an update of what I feel is going on, what I've noticed is going on with like my clients especially, because there were some things that came up in sessions which I think are gonna apply to the collective. Obviously, like my clients are largely like starseeds. They're not, you know, your average muggle type people. They're extremely like awake spiritually and, you know, on their missions. So whatever's going on with them is basically what we're then going to see filtering down into the collective later on at a later point. So I'll kind of go into some of that. But I wanted to do the Q&A first today because you guys have asked some pretty good questions on Instagram. So we're going to get into it, and then I'll do the field update and talk about some. I want to talk about some like shadow integration of the masculine and feminine because that's relevant to the field update as well. So okay, so let's see, what did people ask? Okay, so somebody asked me if I have a Telegram for pics, which is a really weird question. I have a Telegram, obviously, which I put a link to in the description box below. I'm pretty active on there. Like, I'm not like posting loads and loads of things all the time, but like whenever I come across some interesting information, I will post it in there. It's mainly to do with the pokes and the CV narrative, CV19 narrative, which is absolutely unraveling day by day at the moment. Like mostly I've been posting stuff from a guy called Sunil Dand, who is a really interesting doctor because he started being a little bit critical of the narrative at the height of the pandemic. And then he's just become slowly red pilled over time, and now he's like hardline. I get, you know, he's basically shifted most of his work to locals because of the YouTube censorship. He's still on YouTube though, so check him out on YouTube. But then his, you know, you should also check him out on locals because there's things that he's saying on his locals videos that he won't say on YouTube about, you know, the pokes, about, you know, the excess deaths, sudden adult death syndrome. Dr. John Campbell, who is a PhD nurse, has also been covering the data on that. So we're seeing really alarming figures, very worrying side effects. A lot of people that had the, you know, the poke are now realizing that it maybe wasn't their best decision because of the number of adverse events and sudden deaths that are now happening. Thankfully, it's not everyone, which, you know, we're all relieved by. You know, as much as we were against the thing, we don't want, you know, our loved ones who chose to take it to be harmed. But this is basically continuing the slow steady strip of disclosure. I also shared one from a member of parliament who goes by the name of, let me just double check his name right now. I got 222 subscribers in my Temple of Ishtar group, so you can join that one. Let's see if we can get to 333. That'll be fun. His name is what's his name? Oh God. It's actually here on YouTube. On Dr. John Campbell's YouTube channel, Mr. Andrew Bridgen MP, and it's called V Problems. The actual word, I'm not going to say it because I don't want to flag my video by the YouTube censorship algorithm. V Problems UK Parliament, that's the name of the video. But yeah, he gave a speech in Parliament talking about the V Problems. He actually used the word that the narrative is unraveling. Most of Parliament actually walked out in protest, which is absolutely disgraceful because, you know, we had like, at the height of the whole thing, there was like a ticker that was constantly showing us, oh, another person's died, these how many people have died, this is how many people are dying every day. But now that there's so many people dying for unexplainable reasons, there's no ticker, and they're like, oh, that's not weird, even though it's more than usual, and it's alarming. And people who have always been, who were critical of the narrative from the start, and now some who weren't critical but are now starting to turn, are questioning it. Mainstream media is like, there's been some articles where they've acknowledged it, but they've written articles to say, yes, more young people are dying, but it's not because of the poke. Which was another, that was another interview that I shared in the Telegram group. Tucker Carlson interviews Ed Dowd. Now, Ed Dowd is a financial analyst type hedge fund person, so he analyzes like data and numbers and stock prices and projections and things like that. So he started to apply that area of expertise to analyzing like the stock prices of funeral homes, and also insurance payouts for people in the I think the 25 to 40 or 50 age category, like basically young, able-bodied, working professional people. And he's seen like record numbers of insurance payouts because of like disability or sudden adult death syndrome for no reason. So have a look at that. Obviously the mainstream is still trying to keep a lid on it, but they're not going to be able to do that for too much longer, because I don't know about you, but like I know personally several people that died suddenly, or I might not have known the person in question. There were one or two people that I knew personally who died, but I know people very close to them have died suddenly, and that's like at least 5 or 6 people like in the last year. Like I've never noticed that happening before. So I think people are going to start asking questions more and more, especially if they notice that it's not just one person, but they start talking to other people, and they're like, yeah, it was like a heart thing, or whatever. People are going to start asking questions. Again, I don't like the fact that I was right about this. I think it's devastating. It's heartbreaking. It makes me angry. But it will hopefully cause people to ask the important questions, so that people can wake up to what's been going on, and we can shift these systems that really need to go, that have had too much power over humanity for too long. So they need to, and the whole system needs restructuring. So for that reason, I'm glad about it, but I'm not glad about young people dying, so please don't get it twisted. Okay, so what else? Questions? Okay. How can one connect on a deeper level with the ones they love? So you need to connect deeper with yourself first. Like if there's still parts of yourself that are unintegrated, parts of yourself that you've disowned, shadow aspects of yourself, and we all do it, right? There's aspects of our personality that we've basically pushed and said, I'm not like that. Like, I'm not like those other girls, or I'm not like those other guys. And parts of ourselves that we need to meet deeper and more intimately before we can deepen into our emotional intimacy with other people. If we're hiding aspects of ourselves because we're ashamed, or because we feel insecure about those parts of ourselves, then that's going to limit the depths to which we can go with someone, because we haven't gone that deep within ourselves. So this is obviously super timely and a really good question for today's video, because I'm going to be talking more about shadow integration. So I'll refer back to that question. Somebody asked, where am I? It looks so beautiful. I'm in Mexico. Okay. Somebody asked, how can we accept and love our natural beauty and insecurities, especially as a woman in this world? It's not especially as a woman. I mean, as a woman, that's like, I don't want to say that's our role, but that's kind of what the feminine is, okay? As women, our bodies are like, we're fractals of the goddess. I mean, we're all fractals of the goddess, not just women. Animals, plants, nature, men's bodies as well. We are literally a living temple for she, for her, for Shakti, for Sophia, the Holy Spirit, whatever those words that to describe the divine feminine, the feminine Christ. So women, we're definitely more connected to her because of our womb. Our womb contains like the dark matter and the ether of the universe. So really starting to worship your body, not in like a Luciferian or a satanic way where you're like, I'm a god or I'm a goddess. Your body is a living temple for the goddess. It's not that like, so, you know, there's a lot of distortions around the goddess empowerment movement that's like, I'm a goddess and like the man needs to worship me or everybody needs to worship me because I'm a living goddess. No, you're a temple of Shakti, okay? So there's an emanation of source consciousness that flows through you that is actually connected to all life and all things, because we're not separate from that. We're literally like waves in the ocean, which I can see from right out my window. Super grateful to be here. But yeah, the life force that animates our physical vessel is that Shakti, that, you know, the manifestation of what emanates from the Godhead, which is essentially like, you know, it's masculine, then it's feminine. The 0 point is probably more feminine polarity, and then emerges the Shiva, which is the one, and then from there the duality, and then the divine child, Christ, Sophia. But manifested reality is more of the feminine polarity. So yeah, treat your body like a temple. Feed it with living foods, you know, natural foods, foods that grow from the earth. I prefer to follow a vegan diet because for me that's much more honoring of Mother Nature, because it's more sustainable and because it's more in alignment with the feminine principle of care and compassion towards my fellow earthlings. I don't want to be eating them. That's why I follow that diet, and it works best for my body. So yeah, eat a healthy diet of non-processed whole foods that are as close to nature as possible. You know, move your body. Like, I mean, I don't have like, I'll answer this question, somebody asked this as well. I don't have like a workout routine, especially not at the moment because we only just moved here. But moving your body every day is important. So walking, you know, dancing, just being generally animated, because that's how you awaken that Shakti essence. That playfulness, the creativity, create art, like all of those things help to animate that life force that is the goddess, that is beauty, that is your natural radiance. Of course you can do, you know, self-care rituals as well, like, you know, adorning yourself with like scented body oils, and, you know, I've done all of that on my Divine Feminine journey. But also that stuff is great and it is important, but not everybody has time to do that every day, like, let's just be real. So you know, just basically treating your body with the love that it deserves. You know, it's pretty simple, like, it's not. And just acknowledging, you mentioned insecurities, like acknowledging that your insecurities, your vulnerabilities, the areas where you feel shame are part of your human essence, you know, and to, you know, give yourself that loving, unconditional love that is the Holy Spirit, that is Sophia. Loving yourself in spite of all your insecurities, and holding yourself up to the highest standard to always do better, which is kind of that divine masculine accountability. Both of those are where you start to have a hierogamic relationship between yourself and the divine. So yeah, I hope that answers that question. Somebody said come to Mexico. Bam. Chris Plow again asked me what's in Antarctica. I guess he doesn't read watch the videos, so I will just answer that question again on the stories. Ice, there's probably lots of ice. Again, I said in the previous videos, Chris is very into the whole flat earth theory right now, so that's why he's asking me that. I think it's possible that the reason why people aren't allowed to go to Antarctica is A, because it's probably very dangerous, B, they might be doing some kind of experiments there that are kind of like state secrets and are, you know, blocked off to certain people. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's an ice wall that is the edge of the earth. But I definitely think I'm open to the idea of inner earth and inner earth societies, and that there might be, you know, some kind of access tunnels to access to kind of underground tunnels and inner earth societies in Antarctica. Again, I'm not like an expert on that, so don't ask me too much about that, but I'm open to the possibility that there are inner earth societies that, you know, have been hidden from us that we don't know about. Phoebe Miriam Lawson asks, how tall are you? Kidding, because people ask me that in like nearly every Q&A. She asks, how many times a week do you exercise and what type? So at the moment I'm doing nothing, but when I was in Mexico City, I was very consistent about trying to walk everywhere as much as possible. So I would walk to the agency, which was half an hour there, half an hour back. Sometimes I would just walk to the local market and then back again, so that's just 20 minutes. But I would try to do at least 20 minutes a day, if not 1 hour. And I did actually lose quite a lot of my lockdown weight from doing that. Before that, in London, for 6 months, I was pretty consistent with my gym routine. I was going to Parkview Health Clubs, which is an amazing gym where they actually train several Bollywood actors and actresses there, which I didn't know because it was just my local gym. But yeah, I would go like 3 times a week, and I would do weightlifting and some like maybe 15 minutes cardio walking, and then some like not super heavy weights. But I feel like that got me into shape as well. I didn't really lose measurements, but I did, you know, cut down my body fat percentage. I started looking leaner, looking slimmer. Yeah, I just felt a little bit just more toned and more tight, because I don't know if you guys remember me saying that I did put down, I gained like, I would say I gained like maybe 1 or 2 inches during lockdown, but you know, at the biggest point it was only 1 or 2 inches, so it wasn't that much, but overall I was just way bigger, and I just felt way bigger. I felt like just fluffy and puffy, and my favorite jeans, my favorite Levi's didn't fit me anymore. So it was a little bit upsetting. No, I mean, I wasn't like super unhappy with how I looked, but I just wanted to get back into my favorite jeans, and I'm not sure if I do fit into them because I left them back in London at my mum's house, so I'll have to go back and check. It'd be great if I fit into them again. But overall, I don't stress too much about it. Like, I can go about like 6 months without doing anything before it really starts. You know, everything kind of stays in the right place as long as I'm like eating healthy. But during lockdown, especially because in London during the pandemic, we were in lockdown for like 6 months in winter. So I was just eating like really heavy like roasts and like roast potatoes and gravy, and you know, I love eating like that in winter, especially in the UK, but I can't do that every day because then otherwise I will put on a little bit of weight. So Phoebe asked, have any of your family members done your careers with you or your course? My mum did 1 lesson with me, which I think it might have been lesson 4 or 6. There's one where I started getting so many Kundalini movements while I was doing the voiceover that it was like, if you've ever had a Kundalini awakening or even just Kundalini movements going into like the heart space, it's extremely orgasmic. And yeah, it basically, like, I might go back and re-record the course because it was a little bit embarrassing doing that lesson with my mum, because I sound like I'm having an orgasm, and you know, I'm talking about Shiva Shakti Christ Sophia and like, oh, unholy ecstatic union, and it was just a bit, I wanted to turn it off, but I kept on going, and she was just kind of a bit like, okay. So we didn't do any more lessons after that, and I didn't even really want to you know, push it on my family. But I've said to all of them, if they want to have access to it for free, obviously it's very effective for trauma healing, and we, you know, our family's got so much bloodline trauma that, you know, it could really help them. And I've said, you know, any of them can have access to it whenever they want. So if they want to, that's fine, but I wasn't going to be like, hey, come sit, let's do it together, when I'm like making sex noises. I have actually done field work many times on my boyfriend, and he's had, you know, quite big shifts from it. Like the first time we did it, he actually had physical purging, like vomiting, diarrhea, because we removed a massive implant. But every other time he's had like noticeable up levels. And my mum, we also did some field work together. She was stressed about some situation to do with her business. So we did a fieldwork session, and then she was so stressed that she was driving everyone crazy. Like she was coming to everybody for advice, what should I do, da, da, da. So my brother said, please, can you just talk to her, please, because she's calling me every day about this thing. So I was just like, let's do some field work. So we did field work on it, and then I spoke to her a few days later, and she was just like, yeah, I'm fine now. It's just, I just decided whatever is going to happen needs to happen, and I'm just trusting in the flow of it, and yeah, it's fine. And I was just like, wow, like that's a massive 180. And I was just like, do you think it's maybe because we did field work on it? And she goes, oh yeah. So it's almost like the shift that you make from doing this kind of work, both the Kriyas and the quantum field work, because they both do very similar things, they just work in a different way, is that it's almost like it shifts you do a quantum leap into a higher timeline, to the point where you can't even believe that lower timeline you were on was even the timeline that you were on, because now it just seems so ridiculous that you would even be worried about whatever it was that you were worried about. That's Greg trying to make his presence known. Yeah, okay, and then she asks again, what's your most favourite thing to talk about when you meet? Whoops. What's your most favourite thing that you like to talk about when you meet someone? I mean, it really depends on who I'm talking to, but when I was like meeting new people we haven't really socialised much here in this new spot, because we're just trying to get settled and stuff and maintain our daily routines without adding too much extra stuff. But when we were in CDMX in Mexico City, we started connecting with people there. And it was just so cool to just go from like, you know, small talk and then just talking about life or talking about business to then start talking about aliens, and realize that not only was like, I was talking to this one guy called Sheji. Oh God, I really hope I haven't butchered his name, but I'll post a link to his Instagram, because he does a certain kind of, he's a healer, he's a model, he's an actor. He's an actor and a healer, so it was interesting to meet him, but it was just a shame that I didn't get to hang out with him again before we left. But he does a certain kind of body work, and I would be interested to go to one of his workshops next time I'm in Mexico City. But not only was he open to talking about aliens, but he actually knew a lot about them and taught me quite a lot, because he'd done a lot of research on greys, and I don't really know that much about greys. I only know about, you know, the ones that serve the living Christ, which greys are not. They're more negative aliens. So I just haven't really spent that much time learning about negative aliens, because it's just a bit negative, it's a bit gross. Obviously I see like what they've implanted clients with, so I learn about them that way, and then whatever I've learned about them through studying with Emily or reading Lisa Renee's work. But yeah, I'm really interested in galactic history at the moment, so we'll talk about that. Sometimes if people ask me about the work that I do, we'll talk about that. I'll try and explain it in ways that make it sound not too out there. But it's been interesting how many people are actually really open to it, and actually when I explain it are able to understand how it works and what it does. And I will do a separate video. I'm just, you know, I'm going to do like a whole, not sales page, but I'm going to have like a website where people can book in with me via Calendly link and do all that stuff, you know, so it's proper legit and professional. Right now I'm still taking sessions on Instagram, which is, you know, great, and it works, and my clients seem to be happy with that system. I'm happy with that system, but I will have like a separate video that explains in as much detail as I can without rambling on for ages and ages what quantum field work is, what it does, how it helps you, but it's just a very, very comprehensive system. So it's, you know, and I'm only just fully like starting to understand it myself, because when I first started practicing it, I didn't know quite, you know, Emily trains you in it, but it's so vast that I didn't necessarily know what to expect, because some of the things that have appeared to me in the quantum field aren't things that she's trained us specifically to read. They're things that I've had to trust my own, you know, higher self, my own intuition, my own inner guidance system to, you know, decipher the symbols that I'm reading. Or to see, you know, if I see an implant in somebody's field, I have to tune in myself and see what that is doing. Obviously, there are things that we've learned from her as well. She'll teach us about certain types of implants and what they do. And when I learn about those, then I'm able to see them more easily in the field. So yeah, it's, does that answer the question? I think the question was, what do you like to talk about? Yeah, so I like to talk about the work that I'm doing. That's interesting. But sometimes, you know, if a person's not really super spiritually open-minded, then we'll talk about other stuff, like, I don't know, travel or fashion. Or I just feel like if I'm talking to somebody that's not really very spiritually open-minded, I have to, this is, again, relates back to the other question about connecting more deeper with people. I have to shut down so much of who I am, because when you go on this journey, you start to embody more of your higher self. That's one of the things that we'll do in a quantum fieldwork session. We'll actually get a client to open up their field and bring in more of their higher self, and they actually start to embody more and more of who they are as they drop those overlays. So you start embodying more and more of who you are. You start reclaiming lost parts of yourself, doing soul retrievals and things like that, and you actually energetically start to expand. So sometimes it's difficult when I have to shut down certain aspects of myself and not talk about certain things, because that person's not going to be open-minded to it. But it's also important to do that, because, you know, when I started on my awakening journey, I just was so excited and I wanted to talk to everyone and anyone who would listen about all these things I was learning, and I freaked a lot of people out, and I got a lot of anger and resistance from people. And some of you who are just starting your awakening journey may be experiencing this from people, and it can be very traumatic and very upsetting to be invalidated and even made fun of by these people who are massively threatened and triggered by what you're saying. And sometimes it is because these people are hosting demonics, or they have implants that are basically plugged into the black cube matrix, the Saturnian black cube matrix, and they're basically they're essentially like Agent Smiths or NPCs in the Matrix movie. That is a perfect allegory for the way that these people are functioning, because they're literally, like, when I look into the field, and this is the same with starseeds as well, like I can sometimes what I'm shown is literally like, you know, people in the pods with the black, you know, siphoning cords in somebody's light body, and then they're literally hooked into these frequency nets or black cubes or just nasty stuff. So sometimes people are, and so if you start basically shining your light and talking to them about God or, you know, spirits or whatever, or, you know, angelic numbers that you're getting from your guides, they will literally, like, they'll try and shut you down, because they want to stop you from, they want to stop you when you're awakening journey, which they can't, because it's just not going to happen, but they want to stop you from talking. And it is important sometimes to assess where somebody is at and not throw your pearls before swine, because certain people, they actually don't deserve to have that information. They're not going to appreciate it. They're just going to attack you. They're not going to use it. They're not going to benefit from it in any way. They might even use the information to further their own nefarious agendas. So yeah, that's what's up. And sorry if people don't like that, but that's what's up. Okay, so what are we seeing happening? Okay, so it was, I saw this in two separate sessions with two. Okay, so one of them is a client who's super powerful and, you know, doing amazing mission work, and the other one was I did a session exchange with one of the oracles in Emily's community, and both women were connected to the White Rose lineage, so Magdalene, Grail line. So if you are on the White Rose lineage, if you connect to that Grail line, then and you resonate with that Grail line, that energy, then this will apply to you. If you don't understand that, that's completely fine. It's not necessary to understand that to understand what I'm now going to go into. So there was a big timeline repair. That I was able to kind of sense in the fields of these women, where basically we went into a underwater cave. It wasn't necessarily underwater, it was like partially half underwater but half above land. You know when you go caving and you go into like these little underwater caves, it's not completely underwater, but anyway, it was basically a group of like sirens slash nymphs that were connected to the Aquael and Sarah, daughter of Christ lines that basically led us into this cave, and they were also connected to oracles of Avalon lineage, and they had this beautiful crystal that they brought out of the cave, and this crystal was basically imbued with the frequencies. It was like a hierogamic frequency of the divine masculine, divine feminine in divine union, the Christ Sophia, and it basically dated back to the time Atlantean and Lemurian times, before the fall and before the basically Atlantis started developing a lot technologically and started becoming very left brain dominant and separating from the feminine heart of, you know, the mother of Sophia. And Lemuria started to go the other way. It started to become extremely feminine and lose that kind of masculine grounding and structure and architecture. And so Atlantis kind of created its own destruction by, you know, very unethical things that they were doing, like really, really messed up, fucked up things. Like, you know, they were spiritually powerful in that they were able to manifest using the mind, and kind of, they were basically creating chimeras. So a lot of the mermaids that we know about, or, you know, that are written about in mythology, or centaurs, or, you know, these human animal hybrids come from the Atlantean timelines, where Atlantean humans were able to kind of manifest these human animal hybrids that they were using as like pets, or they would use as servants or slaves in their households. And they were even using them for like these Roman style like gladiator battles. It was like super, super fucked up what happened around the time of the fall of Atlantis. They basically ended up destroying themselves because they lost their source connection, they lost their connection to the mother, they lost their connection to what is right and moral and compassionate, and just started to kind of develop this kind of Luciferian type spiritual power that was completely disconnected from the streams of Creator. And what happened with Lemuria was they went too much into the feminine polarity, and they ended up becoming holocausted. So, you know, if you want to research more about that galactic history, read Dolores Cannon's works. She's channeled a lot of information on that. Lisa Renee's channeled a lot of information on that. Emily's obviously opened up the timelines and channeled a lot of information on that as well. So this is all kind of pieced together from those three sources. So what we witnessed in the field when I was reading the client's field was that they basically were able to harness some of that unified energy before this kind of masculine feminine split, and these, you know, polarity started to kind of become too polarized, was kind of infuse some of that hierogamic frequency where things were balanced and unified and harmonious into these kind of crystals which they were keeping in these underwater caves. So they presented us with the crystal, and they started sending out the frequency, and it was just the most beautiful frequency, just beautiful hierogamic with like these beautiful sovereign tones. It was like, you know, white selenite with like golden Christ masculine streams connected to the seraphim. Is it seraphim or oraphim? 1 second, let me check. Which are the ones with the gold tipped wings? One of them's blue and purple. I mean, there was a little bit of both. In one session it was more oraphim, and in the other session it was more seraphim. So the seraphim is you know, the white with the white selenite with the gold. And then in the second reading there is a little bit more of the Oraphim as well, which is more of these like blue purple tones as well that are coming in. So, you know, a lot of like Divine Mother frequencies, you know, that blue and the purple that's like that, you know, hierogamic, you know, masculine and feminine in sacred union, kind of pure royal sovereign frequencies that were kind of coming in, not just through the fields and through, you know, my clients' light bodies, but also through the timelines. So it was basically healing their bloodline trauma, that, you know, all the women and men in their ancestry who had these kind of wounded masculine, wounded feminine splits. So, you know, many of us have in our bloodlines a lot of this kind of reptilian targeting with, you know, wounded masculine consciousness targeting what has become like a wounded feminine consciousness, which is, you know, the Sophia when she's basically been abandoned by the masculine. She has no structure, she has no boundaries, she's still looping in her trauma, and she becomes targeted by this kind of reptilian masculine force that mimics the Christ masculine in certain ways but just wants to siphon her. So, you know, if you have in your ancestry like a history of narcissistic codependent type templating in your parents' relationship or grandparents' relationship, or in any of your bloodlines, any of your ancestry, and you are connected to these particular grail lines, then you will probably experience a timeline repair. As you heal these polarities within yourself, you will also heal your ancestors, and you will stop the cycles of this, you know, continuing forward into the next generation. So it was quite a big reclamation. It was beautiful, and I've just been noticing that those polarities have been harmonizing on the planet in general. Now, I say that, but then at the same time, if we look at what's happening with like the culture war and what's happening between the political left and the political right, it seems more polarized than ever, right? We've got, you know, the right-wing conspiracy Christian, like find in the New Age to Jesus type people who are, that's the type of internal polarization, which I'll do a separate video talking in depth about that, because a couple of people have asked me to kind of speak on things like that. They've sent me posts that people have been making where they're demonizing yoga, they're demonizing energy work, you know, things like that, because they got into the New Age and lacked the discernment to source directly to God, to source to the law of one, the living Christ, and started, you know, kind of communicating with these kind of spirit guides that were discarnate, that were maybe demonic, and that can definitely happen. And the New Age, definitely, there are massive inversions and distortions, satanic inversions and distortions in the New Age, which I've talked extensively about. If you want to study that in depth, please watch Mark Passio's New Age Bullshit Seminar. I know it's 8 hours long, but you will learn so much from it, and it's free, okay? It's honestly, that seminar alone, I don't think that he should even be putting that out there for free. I think he could charge at least $700 for that, because I learned so much from it, and I continue to learn so much from it. But anyway, it's out there. Please go study it, guys. Just watch 1 hour a day, 1 week. You'll know all you need to know. So where was I going with this? Yeah, and then the political left, which are going way too far left. Oh, I still have more questions. I'll get to those in a minute. So yeah, it's kind of like this kind of wounded feminine on the political left against the wounded masculine on the political right, just at each other's throats right now, pushing back against, you know, the LGBT agenda, or like just general white supremacy, QAnon conspiracy people. And yes, we are seeing maximum polarity right now. I don't know if it's maximum, it could probably get worse. Now, why do I say both of these things at the same time? Because, okay, we're dealing with we're dealing with the quantum field, okay? So we're not dealing with the physical plane. What we're seeing manifest on the physical is what's already manifested it's basically the physical manifestation of the galactic war that we've been in for a really, really long time, you know, the fight of good versus evil, and both sides are polarized. They're going, this other side is evil, and they're evil. They're both heavily distorted, okay? Yes, they're both, you know, they're trying to do the right thing, but by not aligning to the central channel of truth and love and becoming balanced within themselves, they're getting, you know, just into polarization. So on one level, by being they're going so good that they end up becoming evil. So what did Chairman Mao say? He said the road to hell is paved with good intentions. And he's literally one of the most evil people on the planet. And I genuinely believe that he probably did start with good intentions. Same like, you know, if anybody studied the history of Cambodia and the Khmer Rouge, their intentions with what they were trying to do, I think they thought that they were obviously they thought that they were doing the right thing, but they ended up becoming so evil. So anything taken too much to an extreme is really, really problematic. I mean, we're seeing that with the political left and the political right. The political left, you know, just insanity, just pure insanity, where they're becoming so woke that they won't even call out like the sexualization of children and things like that. And then the political right saying things like, you know, transgenderism is a total evil ideology that we need to completely stamp out, and just like, well, what are you saying? Like, you basically want to kill transgender people? Like, what the fuck? Like, it's just, there's just nefariousness on both sides. So we need to come back into unification, which is what the highest comers journey is all about, and recognizing, you know, and coming together, you know, sitting around a table and hashing out our differences and trying to find a way that we can all live together. Like Christ tried to show us. Yes, I think that's all I want to say about that. But yeah, it's basically, I need to finish what I was saying. Sorry guys, a little all over the place today. So basically this is a manifestation of the spiritual war that we've been in. So what we're seeing in the fields is what is yet now to manifest, okay? We are going to see it manifest, and it is manifesting in certain circles. Those of us that are committing to doing the work are really, really committing to doing the work. So we're manifesting this balance and this harmony within our own lives, and it will, you know, ripple outwards as the collective. And I'm not saying that it's one way, okay? But the structure will be through divine unions and will be through families and things like that. And, you know, those divine unions are not just going to be a man and a woman, okay? There will be some divine unions where it will be a man and a woman and a woman, a transgender, you know, whatever, okay? And so that's where I want to push back against some of the political right who are, in my opinion, just extremely like homophobic, transphobic, and I just don't believe that that's the way, okay? It's the same type of thinking that led to, you know, just the wiping out of indigenous people, the genocide of indigenous people, you know, the colonization of, you know, India, of Africa, because they didn't agree with the way that people were, you know, with the spirituality of people there. And it's that same thing with the whole New Age to Jesus thing, like everything but your way is demonic. Like, come on, like, you're not that special. Like, everybody has a missing part of the puzzle. Like, yes, we all have some distortions as well. That's where you have to humble yourself before God and ask to constantly be purified and, you know, shown the way so that you can be a divine conduit for truth as much as possible, you know, in these human avatars. Okay, so somebody's asked me, there was another question. From Mexico, from Ken's, who's one of my amazing clients and also training to be an oracle in Emily's community as well, has asked, are you planning to live in Mexico for the foreseeable future, put down roots, start a farm, etc. there? I mean, we love it here. and like my boyfriend's the kind of person where he's not like jumping around everywhere like I am. Like he likes to kind of do slow travel. So he lived in Bali for 4 years, and he stayed there for 4 years. He wasn't going back and forth like I was. Obviously with his job, he kind of has to be in one place. You know, he's an architect, he has his whole setup, you know, he needs his things. So he can't just live out of a suitcase. With me, I've been working as an international model. So my work has kind of taken me to all different kinds of places. And because of my work as an international model, I was then able to initiate into the systems that I'm now bringing to people, you know, as I was going through this awakening journey and traveling the world as a model. So I was actually wanting to try and not convince him, but I was hoping that he would change his mind about, you know, not wanting to travel too much and just be in one place, and that he would want to travel more with me. But since we've kind of been here, I've actually changed my mind. I'm exhausted by traveling so much, and I want to stay in one place. So we're going to be here for at least a year. I do still have to travel though. I have to go back to the UK, and then I also have to go to India and finish my teacher training. So I'm still going to be traveling. But I'm definitely, after this year and after that trip, I definitely want to slow it down. But I'll probably still go back to the UK and see my family and my nieces and all my friends, because I've got an amazing network of friends in London. So I'll probably do that at least once a year. But yes, we'll be here for at least a year, probably more. And then, okay, this is my favourite question that somebody asked. DW Music Club, can you go into depth about the Neo-Tantra scene and how it's misappropriating Tantra? Okay, I can't go into too much depth because I haven't like studied what they're teaching, because as soon as I look at it, I'm like, I don't want to study that like that. I have no, like, I can just tune into it and just be like, that's some seriously distorted stuff. And yeah, I do find it insulting that they use that word Neo-Tantra. Like, what the fuck? Like, let's teach Neo-Christianity. I basically said when I answered this on Instagram, it's like, so obviously in the Neo-Tantra scene they have white Tantra, which is probably the only thing that can call itself real Tantra. Then they have red Tantra, which is all about like the body and sexuality. And then they have black Tantra, which is, I don't know, some very inverted stuff. And I basically said, and I've said this before, it's like a Luciferian teaching something called red Christianity, or a Satanist teaching something called black Christianity. It's not Christianity. It's just basically they've taken certain spiritual teachings and they've used them for whatever purpose they want to use them. So, like, for example, with Red Tantra, they've used tantric teachings to teach about sex. They should just say that they're sexual educators and then reference tantric texts or tantric teachings to teach what they're teaching. There's nothing wrong with being a sexual educator. In fact, I think it's actually very important and worthy to teach people how to have proper sex, because so many people are having terrible sex. Or are sexually traumatizing themselves and others through a lack of education about true sexuality and proper sacred sexuality. But unfortunately, a lot of people in the red Tantra scene are not teaching true sacred sexuality. They're teaching something that they call sacred sexuality, but it's not. Like, there's a lot of polyamory and a lot of free love, and it's all very Luciferian, and you know, it's not. I've talked about this before. Okay, you cannot say that polyamory is true sacred sexuality unless what you were coming from was so inverted and so satanic. Like, maybe you were cheating on, you know, your partner, maybe you were lying to them about who you were with, where you were going, maybe you were addicted to porn and watching really like violent, degrading, dehumanizing material, maybe you were looking at kiddie stuff, you know. And if you were doing all of that, then yes, coming into, you know, relationship anarchy where you have no commitments to anyone and being honest with everybody that you deal with about that, or, you know, entering into a relationship with somebody where you're both honest and you fully disclose everything that you're doing outside of the container, is more sacred than that other demonic shit. Okay, the word sacred just means anything that brings you closer to God, which is the truth and the love frequency. But it's not true Hieros Gamos, which is the pathway back to source. Yes, I can't necessarily say what brings somebody else closer to God, and yes, that could be a step that you take along the journey. But if you've just been in like a normal monogamous relationship, and then you get into all of that thinking that that's true sacred sexuality because of some new age ideas that we're all one, and if you're jealous of other people and you're jealous of the person that you share the most sacred intimacy with, that is the pathway to experiencing the streams that emerge from the divine creator, which is what orgasm is, that if you're jealous about that, it's because you're insecure and you've got some parts of yourself that you need to love more, and you shouldn't rely on another person for your emotional needs. You should just be more sovereign. This is all just new age bullshit. So yeah, I'm gonna be I'm not gonna beat around the bush with my opinions about this. I think it's blasphemy that they're actually using that word Tantra to describe that, and I think people of South Asian heritage like myself are right to be upset about that, and are right to be angry about it, and are right to speak up about it. And even if you are of a South Asian lineage, a South Asian heritage, but you're not connected to a tantric lineage, that doesn't mean that you don't have the right to be upset, because understand with our history of colonization, when the British colonized India, this is where I don't take a leftist position on a lot of things, but I will I'm not into groupthink, but I have my opinions on certain things. Okay, it's just a fact of reality. The British colonized India, chopped it up into 3 different countries, and severed people from their ancestral wisdom. They actually banned people from studying yoga and tantra, which is why so many of us have become disconnected from our ancestral wisdom, the knowledge of our ancestors. So it's important that we reclaim that, but you won't see me, not anytime soon, using the word tantrika or anything like that, even though a lot of what I teach is very similar, just because I don't like the associations that have become that people now have with that word, and I don't want to be associated with it in any type of way, which is sad. It's really sad. And I'm not saying that if somebody is not from a South Asian heritage, that they can't be initiated into a proper tantric lineage, through a teacher. If they travel to India, and if they connect to that teaching, and they want to be initiated into a lineage, I'm not saying that can't happen, and that's not legitimate. That's fine. Similarly, if I come here to Mexico and I somehow really, really connect with maybe the plant medicines, or I want to train in how to host a sweat lodge, I have to become very, very honoring of the people here, the custodians of this land, the indigenous people here. I have to use my platform to first, I have to learn about their culture. I have to use my platform to speak up about the challenges that they're facing. There's so many challenges that indigenous people in the Americas face, and if I were to come here and say, okay, I'm going to now become an ayahuasca shaman, or I'm going to become a shaman in a psilocybin, or the psilocybin, obviously there's psilocybin that grows in the UK as well, so I'm not saying that everybody who's a shaman in psilocybin has to necessarily do that, but using psilocybin as a shamanic tool is something that originates in Mexico. So if somebody's doing that, or they're doing some kind of psychedelic research, they should be connecting to the culture here, and they should be using their platform to speak up about, the issues that Mexican people are facing, things to do, whatever issues, human trafficking, whatever the issues are. I don't see a lot of Tantra teachers who are doing that when it comes to the issues that people are facing in the Indian subcontinent, and that's a shame, and I wish that they would do that. I think that they should be doing that. I think if they wanted to be respectful to the teachings and the lineages which they're initiated into, they should be doing that. That's what I'm doing as somebody who's initiated into Himalayan Kriya Yoga. I mean, I've always spoken up for you know, what's happening in my ancestral homeland, both India and Pakistan, because that's what I would do anyway, because I'm of that ancestry. Do you know what I mean? So like, if people have connected to that spiritual wisdom, then they have to properly connect. Like, if they have an actual connection to that, then they have to properly connect. So if you're not doing that, if you're watching this video and you're a person who's not from that lineage and from that ancestry, and you're not kind of giving, you know, credence to the originators from which the spiritual teachings that you're teaching people and profiting from come from, understand, even if we don't say it to your face, we are side-eyeing you, okay? So maybe people don't want me to admit that, but that we are side-eyeing you. So, you know, it's just a shame. And, you know, like, I'm not saying that there aren't some legit teachers, like, who are teaching Western Tantra and who are teaching it more as like with the white Tantra. There are, and there, you know, I'm not necessarily going to name any names, because I noticed that even if I do think that they are legit and teaching a lot of good codes, I've noticed every single one of them has some kind of distortions, because we all do. We all have some kind of distortion. So let's be honest about that. That's why I'm not going to recommend anyone right now. But what I will say is, what was I saying? I can't remember what I was going to say. Oh yeah, check your lineages, okay? So if there's somebody that you feel called to work with who's, you know, teaching Tantra, ask them about their lineage, okay? Ask them who initiated them, who, you know, and check that lineage, okay? Like, whoever initiated them, check who initiated them. Like, that's how you know. And understand that also, even with yoga, there was a lot of distortions. A lot of the teachers, the Indian teachers that introduced yoga to the West, were also just narcissists and sexual predators, okay? Bikram was a total sexual predator and an narc who profited off a very real system that he stole from, like, the Buddhist monks in India. Sri K. Patabi Joyce was also a sexual predator and a narcissist. That's now come out again about him. So don't deify any of these, like, gurus, but just make sure that the lineage is legit and what they're teaching is legit. But obviously with, like, somebody like Bikram or Sri K. Patabi Joyce, the system that they're teaching, either they're not practicing it properly, fully, because they obviously haven't achieved any kind of self-realization, or there's something wrong with the system. There's some distortions in the system, which I suspect with Ashtanga. Like, Ashtanga is very useful for what it does, but it doesn't do. I don't think that you're going to be able to achieve enlightenment just doing Ashtanga every day. But I do think that there's very real benefits to something like Himalayan Kriya Yoga. Kundalini Yoga, I'm pretty doubtful about. I mean, if you look at the allegations against Yogi Bhajan, that will also tell you that there's probably something wrong with the system. The system's incomplete somehow, or they just weren't practicing it as much as they were marketing it and teaching it. So yeah, just check for those things, but also check for the lineage. With Tantra, if somebody comes from, like, an Osho lineage or an Agama lineage, which is like the Tantra school in Thailand, where there were a lot of allegations of rape and sexual misconduct, or also International School of Temple Arts, those are all questionable lineages. There have been many accusations of sexual misconduct against all of those schools, which I don't think are real schools. They're more like just cults. So yeah, that's why I don't really talk about Tantra, even though what I teach is so similar. So yes, I think that's probably all I'm going to talk about today. Yeah, so we left it on kind of like a fierce note, but yeah, that's fine, because y'all know I'm like that. So yeah, thanks for watching, guys. If you want to book a session with me, then you can message me on Instagram, just send me a DM and we can take it from there. If you want to try true tantric sciences, I'm not even going to say that, it's yogic sciences, okay? But Himalayan Kriya Yoga is white Tantra, basically. It's kriyas that will detox your body of traumatic imprints, will rewire you at the causal level, i.e. the mental level, so you'll think new thoughts, and it will alchemize your sexual energy, so it clears reversals, leaks, things like that, and connects you to the divine streams. We connect to Holy Father, Holy Mother, through that system. So highly consider joining that course. The link is in the description, and I will see you in the next video, guys. Peace out. One love.